speaking to Dave Brown, the CEO of Impala Platinum. Let's come to the economic environment and the situation that is unfolding in the Eurozone at the moment. There is much debate that we could see a double-dip recession scenario. What impact is that ultimately going to have on Impala Platinum? Obviously, the East plays a big role in supporting the platinum price at this stage, with China and demand for vehicles out of that territory.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Ultimately, China and Japan probably now account for close to 40 to 45% of our metal. Those two markets are growing very substantially. In platinum, we've seen a very strong growth in terms of the jewelry demand. And with regard to palladium, one of the sister metals, because of its use in gasoline motor applications, we've seen a significant upsurge there. In fact, China is probably on target this year to overtake America as the largest producer of motor vehicles in the world. So we've had a very strong demand element coming forward from the East. We spoke about earlier the investment demand, and quite clearly with the economic woes unfolding in terms of Eurozone, quite clearly we've seen a flight to alternative investment, and obviously that's been beneficial for us as well. The one factor that it is obviously impacting is the lower industrial demand, particularly in the auto catalyst industry in Europe.
Do you think we could go back into a global double-dip recession?
I believe it's possible, but I would say it's probably going to be more of a financial nature rather than an economic nature, if I may put it that way. I think we're already beginning to see the first signs of recovery coming through in the United States. I think Europe is probably lagging that somewhat and will take a little bit longer to come out of that. But I think the very strong industrial demand elements that we've seen coming through from the East, and certainly I think what we have seen is we've seen a shift of maybe economic power from the developed nations into the developing nations, and I include India in that and other Southeast Asian countries, where we've seen very good strong growth, and obviously that's helped to ameliorate some of the impacts that we've seen coming through from the developed countries.
So Dave, you don't subscribe to the view that China is fueling a bubble in commodity prices, including platinum?
I don't think so, no. I think there is a genuine internal demand that's beginning to be created. You know, when you've got a population of over 1 billion people, it's quite a large internal market, and that internal market is beginning to develop. In fact, I was there in China probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and certainly first-hand experience, you can see there's a very significant internal churn that's taking place.
The biggest problem that you face in South Africa, is it HIV/AIDS or is it safety?
Well, I think unfortunately there can be related factors. I think there are a number of issues that are impacting the mining industry. I think the point that you mentioned in terms of safety is a very big issue that we do face. You know, it's not only an issue within our own industry, but I think the mining industry generally. I think unfortunately within South Africa we have a slightly risk-taking culture, which is not evident in other areas that I have visited to kind of observe and see what happens in other safety environments. And it's something that we are going to have to work together with obviously our staff and obviously with the unions and government to ensure that we get an agreement that I think, you know, at the end of the day our objectives are all the same, but maybe our methodologies of getting there. So I think we need to get closer alignment in terms of to ensure that the journey that we need to travel is tighter than what it is at this stage. I think you mentioned in terms of HIV/AIDS, obviously health is a very real issue, particularly in the mining industry, well, not only in the mining industry, in the country. And certainly I think the difficulty that we are seeing now is that there is a, shall we say, maturing of the pandemic, and obviously a lot of people who contracted the disease some time ago are now getting to points where they can be seriously ill, and obviously that's impacting in terms of productivity and on other health issues. And for us, why I said those two items are somewhat linked is quite clearly when one is in an underground environment, it is a difficult environment, is a hard environment, and quite clearly one wants to make sure that you have healthy individuals who are not only endangering their own safety but potentially could endanger other people's safety. So those two issues for me are somewhat interlinked. I'm glad to see that there's some leadership that's been provided on this issue, because I think it's something that no longer can we keep in the closet, so to speak. I think we have to be far more open about this particular issue, because in essence it's something that affects a lot of South Africans on a daily basis. And quite clearly, even though we've put in education process, we provide antiretrovirals, that doesn't detract from there's a real issue still there and there's a real crisis. The other issues that we spoke about was power, in terms of the Eskom power issue. Interestingly enough, power, is always perceived.
Can you rank these problems that you face in terms of your number one problem, or are they all pretty much on a par?
I would say for us as an industry, our number one problem is probably safety, and quite clearly, we have a moral right and a moral issue to obviously continue to push towards zero harm. In my particular job, for me, it's probably the worst part of my job is when we have news of a fatality. It is, and I can imagine, the impact it has on the family concerned, when I know it has a significant impact on myself as well. So I would say safety is something that, for me, I'll be really proud of being associated with the industry, when I know that people can go to work and I know they'll come back to their loved ones safely at night. That'll make me very proud. But I think there's a long way to go before we get to that. The second issue, I would say, is really around skills. We haven't talked about that, but I think skills is a real issue, particularly in the context of the mining industry. The mining industry is not seen as a sexy industry, and is not attracting, sort of young people in the way that it used to. And quite clearly, we need to kind of turn that around to ensure that we can get in the brightest and youngest minds coming into the industry, because quite clearly from that point of view, that will help to breed innovation and new ways of looking at it.
Dave, how do you define your leadership style to change tack completely at this point?
I try to be a very consultative person. I like to work in consensus. I like to work in teams. But having said that, if I need to take the decisions, then obviously I will take the decisions. But I always like to try and take an informed decision based on a process of consulting with senior members of staff.
When we saw equity markets bottoming in 2009 and the financial crisis unfolding, did you have to take some very hard decisions at that time in terms of the mining operations at Impala Platinum?
Well, I think we took some quite stringent financial decisions, and in fact the overarching, so we say, strategic priority became cash preservation, and I think it's something that put us in a very good position. We, unlike some of our peers, we haven't had to issue equity. We've continued to pay dividends, and we continue to maintain a cash positive balance sheet.
And the market certainly celebrates that around Impala Platinum, given the market commentators that I speak to on a regular basis. You are the preferred play in the platinum sector if you were to look at Impala Platinum versus Anglo Platinum. I said Anglo Platinum, you didn't say it. No,
I couldn't possibly say that. But I think from our point of view, I mean, quite clearly, it was something we made a very conscious decision to obviously look at trimming cash outlay. We also deferred certain projects, and we obviously then looked at quite a stringent cost-cutting exercise as well.
Dave, what do you feel is fair value for Impala Platinum's share price?
Look, I certainly believe it's higher than where it is now. And I think it's dependent on a number of factors. Quite clearly, I think it's dependent on what the outlook for the metal prices. Our own personal view is that we see the metal prices remaining strong. We're very excited by palladium. We think palladium is in a good demand, and we see the fundamentals for that metal looking very strong, which will obviously increase the value in terms of dollar terms of that. I think the converse, in terms of we spoke about earlier with the rand-dollar exchange rate being somewhat of a drag on profitability.
What's the ideal rand-dollar exchange rate for you?
Well, as I say, I think we look at a rand basket price, so it's a combination of the dollar prices as well as the rand-dollar exchange rate. So, quite frankly, from our point of view, we'd prefer to see a slightly weaker rand and slightly moderated dollar metal prices, because quite clearly, from our point of view, we want to make sure that we can provide platinum, palladium, rhodium, etc. to the market at a reasonable price that users want to consume that. To be foolish to say there are no alternatives in the world, and quite clearly we want to make sure that we first of all secure supply. In other words, there's a constant supply coming from South Africa, and second of all, it's at a reasonable price for the consumers of those metals.
Renewable energy and structural changes in the energy marketplace. Ultimately, what impact is that going to have on the platinum story?
Well, I think if we look at the two issues, I mean, renewable energy in terms of producing electricity for us has very little impact from a PGM perspective. Then if one then takes that further downstream to look at modes of transport, if one looks at the automobile as we have it now, quite clearly it's a large consumer of platinum group metals. And then if one goes to the next step, which is the hybrid vehicle, which is quite talked about, that obviously has an internal combustion engine as well.
So
as
autocats are still deployed in the hybrid?
It's still deployed. And then if one looks at alternative fuel sources, whether it's ethanol, etc., those will still require autocatalysts.
But not electric cars.
But not electric. And electric cars for us, quite clearly, we believe will be a factor. Will it be a material factor over the next 5 years? Probably not. And the reason for that is I think in essence that electric vehicles are still somewhat plagued by issues such as range and affordability are two significant issues. And I think the other one that maybe people don't always see or miss the point is that all you're doing is the carbon footprint is moved from the electric vehicle back to the power station, because you still need to produce the power in order to propel the electric vehicle.
Coming to Dave Brown and where you're going from here. You joined Impala Platinum in 1999, as we pointed out earlier in the interview. So you're looking at a relatively long period at the helm of this company. Are you set here for the foreseeable future?
I think for the foreseeable future, yes, I am. I'm very happy at Impala. I've, as I say, given up a good many hours of my career and my life for the company, and quite clearly I love the people, I love the company, and that's one of the reasons that I stay. I feel very motivated by the people, and certainly I wouldn't want to leave at this stage, no.
In terms of retirement, ultimately when you get there, and as you point out, that's a long time off, what do you want to do next after the corporate side, or will you continue to play in the corporate arena?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'm not sure necessarily I want to continue to play in the corporate. I think I've been working since 1984. I've done a fair stint in the corporate environment. I think if I was to think of something ideal, it would probably be more in the entrepreneurial spirit, but I would like to think it would still be in the mining arena. It's something that I think once mining gets in your blood, it stays there.